Hey guys, so today we're going to do a video diary on my Flicker Strike Aura's character. This is going to be a video diary, meaning that it's not a guide. This is just to display the progression of the character and the current state that it's at for the people that are interested in the build and that maybe want to see, like, compared to their own character's progression. This is pretty much the video for you. So, like I said, it's an Aura Flicker Striker. We rely on Aura's sacrifice to ignite mobs, and due to that, we gain frenzy charges for every mob that we ignite. I'll maybe show you gameplay first, then I'll talk more about the build, then we're going to discuss a little bit about the gear, the leveling, and all that kind of stuff. So, first of all, we reserve all our mana. This is an elemental build, and we can go to Aqueducts. Easy zone, kind of, just because we're displaying the character, the basics of it, right? We're 77, this is a 67 zone, pretty basic stuff. It starts off pretty slow, but I just want to show you the gameplay because this build is not necessarily for everyone. And this is why. We need frenzy charges. I'll show you full speed with frenzy charges. So, as you can see, some people might have an issue with this. Might get a little bit of motion sickness, a little bit of, you know, they might be a little bit uncomfortable. So I want to show you. The gameplay is very smooth. Character is actually incredibly tanky. It has a lot of defenses. This is a crit thing, but we use resolute techniques, so it doesn't affect us. We get endurance charges. We get, you know, evasion, acrobatics, phase acrobatics. We're able to use fortify whenever we can, or whenever we want to. And yeah, we're just focusing on getting 6 of the frenzy charges, which is the maximum for our build without investing heavily into like gear and stuff like that. And we use double Volk haste, and we just wreck stuff. That's the general idea. Right now the character's in a little bit of an awkward spot because we don't have an alpha howl, and it heavily relies on like, just like I said, elemental damage. It is an elemental build, so we can be doing a lot more damage. The gear of this character is worth, I don't know, like 10 chaos at most altogether. All of this is dirt cheap. The reason why I made this character was because I have no currency. I can maybe show you the boss, and we're gonna get into the build for the people that are actually interested in it. There you go. You can see that this is with frozen ground, and we're still wrecking. Oh yeah, and we use Arctic Armor for defenses too. But I'll talk about that in a little bit. Oh, and our anger just leveled up. What do you know? A lot more deeps. Currently we do about 60k DPS, something like that. But it's going up so much every level. Our auras are very low level. We're not using Wrath. We're not exactly shocking the way we want to just yet because of that. And our gear is really bad. Alright. So, let's go over it. Like I explained before, we rely on getting frenzy charges through Aura Sacrifice. That's like the main thing of the build. The Ignite actually does significant amounts of damage because we have a lot of elemental damage on the tree. And yeah, you can't use a shield, but that's not really a problem because we have a lot of defense, like I've explained before. The reasoning behind this skill tree, there are a couple ways to approach this. I decided to go with this. I'll explain some other variations in just a second. I decided to start with a shadow and go with a typical elemental build, meaning that we're going to pick up charisma, we're going to pick up sovereignty, we're going to get an alpha howl, which is going to give us, I think, 28%, and then 8% from the alpha howl, which is going to make it so that we fully reserve our mana, but we will be able to run an additional aura, which is Wrath, which is going to help out with a ton of damage, and obviously also shocking bosses even, because yeah, we do a lot of damage. Maybe not necessarily bosses, but well, maybe with the right jewels, I'm pretty sure we can shock bosses. Even now, I have like close to no lightning damage, and we still do, you know, about 500 average, which is a really nice amount. So yeah, we start off with Shadow. We pick up Blaze for the chance to ignite because it's really helpful. We currently have about 35% chance to ignite, I believe. Let me just confirm real quick. Yes, 35% chance to ignite. We hit 3 times because of the multi-strike, which results in about 78%. I think 72, 78. You'd have to do the math on that. And yeah, we head on over to some evasion nodes. This is an evasion build, although a lot of our gear has to be hybrid so we don't get that much evasion, but you can still easily get about, you know, 10, 15 like easily, with no grace running if you're playing just solo, which is the coolest thing about this build actually. The fact that you can play Flicker Strike in groups, that's really amazing in my opinion. You don't have to use Blood Rage or Blood Dance or anything. It's self-sustain, really fun. Yeah, we pick up Blood Drinker just because it's really efficient, and we get Frantic because Frenzy Charges are king for this build. Acrobatics, Phase Acrobatics, typical defensive stuff. You know, some Jewels, more Frenzy. We get a boatload of life on this skill tree. You get about 220% with stuff like Herbalism. Traveling over here, you can pick up Hired Killer if you feel like it. Profane Chemistry. Like I said before, we have to pick up Charisma once we have the Alpha House so that we can sustain an additional aura. Although you can get Charisma and you can get Sovereignty without an Alpha Howl and then run, you know, a Herald of Ice or something if you don't have an Alpha House. So there's no problem there. We travel over here. There's a lot of traveling, but it's alright. It's worth it. It's like any elemental build. Constitution is really worth it. More jewels. Resolute Technique is necessary. This can't be a crit build because it's only 5% base crit chance and we don't want to worry about our accuracy. So we go with Resolute Technique. We get a Frenzy Charge, we get Devotion, we get Celestial Judgment and Celestial Punishment, huge damage increases. More jewels, we travel through Catalyze because yeah, increased elemental damage is the key to this build pretty much. Everything scales our damage so much. Elementalist, you know, discipline and training, retribution, attack speed, base damage, what more do you want? And then sovereignty and purity of flesh. The way I leveled this was I just picked up the elemental nodes over here, including cold-hearted calculations, which in the endgame build you can also pick up because it is melee damage and intelligence, which is, you know, a bit tricky to get on the build until the higher levels, so it is useful. You can either, if you feel YOLO, you can travel to the Templar and pick up more AoE, more damage nodes, or if you feel like you have to be more defensive, you can go towards acrobatics. It really doesn't make a difference because you don't need the mana reservation nodes until you have an Alpha Howl or until you have an Auros, which is only level 67. So I leveled with Flame Totem, Fire Trap, Firestorm Multi-Trap, and I did this, like I said, until level 67 when I immediately switched to the Auros and pretty much immediately was doing damage. All I needed to do is get a little bit of elemental damage on my jewelry, but you can still see that I don't have elemental damage here. My jewels in general are pretty mediocre. I'm not using Wrath, and my Anger just now hit 18, so in the demonstration it was still 17, and we're using a mediocre roll Auros on a 5-link setup, even though 6 links are incredibly cheap because of the corrupts and all that. For bandits, we help Oak, help Creighton, and help Creighton. That's very important. Reflect can be an issue at times. I just want to mention it's not really an issue just yet, and later on you're stunning yourself anyway, and if you have enough evasion you can evade your own reflect. So I really don't know about that. For right now, I don't drop myself below like 70% on a big reflect mob. But maybe in the future that's gonna change. I'm not sure. If anything, we can always pick up Volpact, so yeah, shouldn't be a problem. Let's go maybe over a little bit more over my gear. So Aura Sacrifice, pretty basic stuff. Random helmet for like 2 chaos, pretty basic stuff. You know, you want to go for the evasion, but you want to take it just enough so that you can run your supports. That's why I'm saying a lot of the gear is hybrid. Really bad chest piece that I'm looking to replace soon as I get some currency. Really bad ring. We tried to get attack speed on the corrupt, didn't quite work out. Another really bad ring, at least for this build. But yeah, we go with what we want, what we got. I'm still forced to use this because I'm not high enough level, so I still don't have intelligence here, and I don't have like a good hybrid amulet with some int or like all attributes. So you have to get that in through this thing, but I'm gonna be replacing this in a level or 2. And then really, well, these gloves actually aren't bad. Attack speed we value very highly. So yeah, especially if you can get it on gear, because every piece of anything is just like, as you can see, this is average damage and it's 5.7. By removing a ring, we drop to 5.3. So yeah, increases on like elemental with like elemental damage with weapons and stuff like that is pretty huge for any elemental build. And again, we're not running Wrath, which is the biggest deal, or an Alpha Howl, which gives us +2 levels on both of our auras, uh, really average belt, and then really bad boots for our build. Movement speed is not nearly as important as like getting life and more of that stuff. But yeah, I'll go a little bit because some people might be looking at the gameplay and they're like, oh, this is so rippy. How can you play this on hardcore and all that? Like I said before, we get about 220 life, which should result in approximately, 6.5k life, 7k life, something like that. But depending on your level, we get acrobatics and phase acrobatics, which, dodge is always great. Um, our weapon really doesn't help us out. We get a lot of evasion nodes if somebody in your party is running Grace. That's great. We get 4 endurance charges that we get through Warlord's Mark. And we also use Arctic Armor. The way Arctic Armor works is we never move, so Arctic Armor is always active. We don't get the benefit of the frozen ground because we don't move, but we do gain the benefit of 12% less physical damage and 12% less fire damage, which also goes up with levels, and for whatever reason it has tooltip DPS, but we shouldn't really worry about that. And yeah, jade flasks are really efficient. You don't need a lot of flasks. I'm currently using remove shock, remove bleed, and I'll probably replace this with a Ziri's Promise as soon as I can afford it or something like that, just to make the leeching a little bit easier because we do use blood magic on a 6 link. Well, I guess I'll explain that soon. And this should be a warding also. This guide is really, well, this diary is all over the place, but I'm trying to cover as much as possible, as fast as possible, so yeah. The links are not necessarily set in stone. A couple of the things we will be changing, but our main thing is Blood Magic, Flicker Strike, Melee Splash, Multi-Strike, and Weapon Elemental Damage. I did try to make Flicker Strike work on mana, with just like mana gain on hit gems, but it really wasn't working out. You can see the cost is pretty high, so if we get a 6 link, it would be approximately like a 70 mana cost or something, which is too much even for Eldion Rings or maybe like Dynamo and Righteous Decree. I'll try, but I wouldn't expect too much out of it. We use Volhaste, increased duration, like with any of my builds. It's just too good. I mean, you can't really drop it for clear speed. We use Arctic Armor on a separate spot. This doesn't have to be linked with anything. We use Blood Magic, Flicker Strike, Fortify. This is for those really tanky mobs. Oh yeah, and Fortify is something I forgot to mention. We do use Fortify, which is a huge buff to our general defenses, right? And again, the links are not set in stone, so a lot of these things can change. I've already changed my setup a couple times, but you will be updated through other diaries on that. Warlord's Mark, Curse and Hit, Herald of Thunder, and then Anger. Anger doesn't really have to be linked with anything, but yeah, we've got an open slot, so that's what we've got. The Warlord's Mark, Curse and Hit, Herald of Thunder is incredibly useful. It helps us leech and gives us free endurance charges pretty much. I mean, what more do you want? And we do a lot of lightning damage, so we've pretty much always got something shocked, even without Wrath. And I only have like lightning damage on my amulet, and it's a tiny amount, right? And then cast when damage taken, Arctic Breath, Pierce, greater multiple projectiles. Optional. I really like this setup. I think the slow is really amazing, especially when we're not using a defensive curse like Temporal Chains or Enfeeble. Although, endurance charges are pretty defensive. This is optional. This is what I found to work. Something else that you might want to use is a endurance charge on melee stun, curse and hit, Warlord's Mark Vengeance setup. So when we get hit, we have a chance of triggering Vengeance, which most likely will stun some of the targets around us, which will give us an endurance charge, so something bonus as a defense. And then on top of it, we've got curse and hit linked to it, so it's gonna curse everything around us with Warlord's Mark. I got rid of this in favor of the Volhaste, but this might change. We might get rid of this. I don't know. You're kind of limited with the colors of things. I do want to use a Ziri's Step in the future, and like I said before, an Alpha Howl in our headpiece, just because it's so freaking strong. But yeah, all of these things are subject to change. Hope to keep you guys updated. If you're really interested in the build, here you go. Hopefully this was helpful. Hopefully helpful. And I think that's about it. I'm just trying to check my notes here if I've missed something. Oh yeah, and jewels. Well, jewels work the same way as they do with weapon elemental, essentially. It's such a huge damage increase. you should definitely look into getting like melee damage and then fire damage on jewels. If you can get melee damage and like attack speed with two-handers, that's pretty good too. Because the fire damage doesn't scale the lightning portion of our damage, which right now is not that high, but in the future with Wrath, it's going to be about, I'd say 25% of our total damage, something like that. But yeah, each gem you can see, even with no frenzy charges or anything like that, 5.7, you know, some random gem I remove, it drops down to 5.46. So big changes for stuff like this. And this is attack speed, which doesn't nearly, oh, actually, this is pretty great. But yeah, it doesn't display on the tooltip because Flicker Strike's tooltip is average damage, so you have to calculate it by yourself. Alright, enough rambling. Oh yeah, and if you can get endurance charges on your belt, that's amazing. If you can get a frenzy charge on your amulet, that's amazing. On your boots at Ziri's step with additional frenzy charges, oh my god, that's so good. Flicker Strike with that is amazing. But that's pretty much it. I'll keep you guys posted. Thank you again for watching the video. Sorry it was so long, but hopefully, again, it was informative. See you guys in the live stream or in the future videos. Bye bye!